Not a problem.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order of Roads Education Organization doing business as Pivot Charter Schools at 1:05 p.m. And I recognize this is a very challenging time. Never mind the pandemic and some of the civil challenges we have, but then with fires in California blazing across, especially the northern part of our state and our service area, it makes it even extra challenging. So thank you to the staff for being able to make it today and for the board members who could. I know things will get better. I don't know when, but I appreciate your working through this in adverse times like this. So I will ask Ms. Jones to call the roll.
All right. Let's see, Chairman Lewis?
Yes, here.
Vice Chairman Harrigan is absent. Secretary Halverson
Here.
is present. Member Holmes is present. Member Martell is absent currently, but hopefully will join us soon. Member Siegel is absent. And Member Sutherland?
Here.
Is present.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum of the board present. I will now call for public comment. This is the time and place at any one of our sites for citizens, employees, representatives, or anyone else that would like to comment on anything not on our agenda today. Are there any members of the public at any one of our sites that would like to comment to the board on items not on our agenda? I'll wait a few moments. Give a little extra time for people in case they're trying to unmute. Liz, do you see anyone on the line? I don't see any other folks on the line that might be commenting. Do you see anybody?
No, I have not received any text messages or chats or heard anyone.
And no other comments by email?
Nope, no other comments by email. And then I just want to be sure that that we didn't skip the approval of the agenda.
Okay, well, why don't we do that? I'll ask for a motion to approve today's agenda.
Motion.
Thank you, Board Member Holmes. Halverson, second. Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved 4-0. Thank you, Liz, for reminding me of that. Again, are there any other members of the public that would like to speak under public comment? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move to item 3.1, reports and presentations to the board. Liz, our financial update. Looking a little better.
And if I could ask people who are on, if you could mute if you can mute yourselves, and that way there's no background noise, and it will also allow you to hear Liz a little bit better, unless you have something to say clearly. But while you're,
I do want to just say a special welcome to our staff. I can see many of you are on, Corinne, Lindsay, Liz, others. Thank you for joining our call today and being available. I hope you've had, for those of you who had a restful or could take time off, I know many of you are administrators and worked through the summer, but I hope it was good. And I really appreciate what you're doing to prepare our school for an unprecedented school year. So I'm sorry, Ms. Gaskell, I wanted to thank your staff for their efforts thus far, and just recognize that I see them on the line.
Definitely, thank you. And then just one more reminder that we are recording this meeting, so just so that everyone is aware that is going on. Okay, so financial update. Things are looking a little bit better since the last time we met. So as part of the update today, we'll go through some news from the state, what has changed with the state budget, and then an update to our own forecast organization-wide as well as school by school. And then we have the financials, which were included in the packet. So a lot has happened at the state level. Not 100% all related to budget, obviously, because there's a lot of other moving pieces. But one thing that I wanted to note, because it does affect our some of the board's actions, which they'll take later, is the changes to the LCAP, the formerly what we would normally have as the local control accountability plan, but we have a new report with the same acronym, the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, that we'll be doing for this coming school year. So it's the same acronym, but a new report, and the timelines are very different. So if you recall, we did not do our usual LCAP approval in June because of the changes due to COVID. And these updates now are different from the information we had in June. So by September 30th of this year, we will need to approve and adopt the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan for the 2020-2021 school year. And then kind of trailing that by December 15th is the LCFF budget overview for parents, which normally accompanies the LCAP. So that will be kind of aligned more with the first interim budget report. And then we will go back to, hopefully, fingers crossed, the traditional LCAP cycle starting in, this says July 1, but that's when it's due. So the board will be seeing the LCAP for the coming 3 years in June of 2021 so that they can approve it and hold the public hearing and everything like that. Some of these things here require, actually both of these, the September 30th deadline and this December 15th deadline, require a public hearing to be held prior to the adoption of these things, and it must be held at a separate meeting. So when the board calendar is discussed later, you'll see that these things kind of pop up. Now to the more finance side. So the good news, the big good news, is that the LCFF funding has swung up. So we had a positive COLA and then a 10% cut, which netted out to a cut of about 7.92% in our local control funding formula funding. And so now that has been zeroed out. So that does provide a big boost in anticipated revenues. We also did qualify for 2 out of 3 sources for the learning loss mitigation funding, which is excellent. I know there was some question about whether non-classroom based charter schools would be eligible for all of those funds or some of those funds. So this is actually a little better than we had anticipated, which is great. There have also been some improvements to the state special education funding rates and drivers. So the downside is that despite projecting these improved revenues, there are now a lot of deferrals that are in the plan. So we'll see those in a little bit here, but a couple other challenges that we're facing is the growth cap, essentially, which we'll also talk about in a little bit. But we had originally budgeted for an increase of approximately 29 ADA, and now with the updated revenues, we have to kind of walk that back to where we were in terms of ADA in the 2019-20 fiscal year. Another big challenge that we are keeping a close eye on is the state deferrals, and we'll have a slide on that to show the details in a minute. Some of the funds that are related to the coronavirus relief and learning loss mitigation and things like that are sort of pots of money that non-classroom based charter schools do not qualify for. So there are some revenues for which we don't qualify. So compared to some of our other charter school friends, we're seeing a little bit less of an uptick in revenues. And then on the expense side, just kind of as a general thing, health and liability insurance is definitely something that is on the rise for those expenses. So here's a little more information about the ADA challenge that we're facing. So the state included in their budget, the budget trailer, this hold harmless language that essentially said all schools will be able to claim the ADA that they had in 2019-20. And while that's a great benefit for any schools who are actually losing students, it's a detriment to those who are growing or who are planning to grow. So in our budget, we had originally approved a total ADA of 762.1, but now with the way that the funding will work, we have to walk that back to 732.9. So it's a decrease of 29.2 ADA overall. And the way that splits up across the sites is shown down here. San Diego, we had actually projected a fairly low ADA compared to, just based on our trends anyway. So they're the one site that has actually a slight increase in ADA. But overall, in terms of revenues, it is definitely a decrease to the forecast. The deferrals that we mentioned, so there are many, many months that are showing deferrals here. And the last time we saw this was, sort of in the Great Recession, 2008, and the fallout of that over several years, we experienced deferrals. And so we'll see what actually materializes with this, but to read this graph and understand what it's showing, basically the color coding that's down below the 0% is the payment that's being deferred. And then when you see the same color above the 0% line, that's when it's actually getting paid out. So the June apportionment is expected to be paid out in July, and then a portion of the May apportionment is expected to be paid out in August. So the farther, the earlier you get in terms of the deferral, the later it gets paid out.
We're back to good old accounting tricks at the state. I thought we'd
Yes.
do better. What a shame.
Yes. So again, this may fluctuate, based on what happens with the funding, especially from the federal government and things like tax revenues and things like that. But this is what we are currently preparing for. Okay. Any questions on the state budget updates? Okay, so we'll move on to how this affects our budget. So overall, despite the fact that there was an increase or a decrease to the ADA forecast, the LCFF boost definitely made up for that. So we have a big uptick in our LCF revenues, which is great. This learning loss mitigation funds is also a big help. At this point, we have not adjusted a lot of expense, just things that are for sure known. So there is still some work to be done on the expense side, adjusting that. And obviously, a lot of that requires board input and guidance. So so there will be some updates to that forthcoming. This is how it breaks out by site. You'll see that the two of the sites were slightly negative and have now swung positive in terms of their operating income. Riverside, while still being negative, largely due to the facilities project, is looking a bit better. And then North Bay, of course, being our largest school with the most students, has had a very strong uptick. So this is something that we're looking very closely at to make sure that we are going to be adjusting expense appropriately. So just some details here. We already pretty much discussed most of these things, but as you can see, the forecast for North Bay is the one that has changed the most dramatically, largely because of the fact that they have the largest ADA. So one thing that we want to make sure to look at closely is SB 740 includes legislation which requires us to spend certain percentages of our money on instructional expense. So we want to make sure that with this increase in revenues, now we address the expense side to make sure we're still complying with those thresholds and those requirements. So Jana and I have been discussing that with EdTech, and we'll come up with some proposed expense adjustments to the forecast as well that we'll discuss with the board at some point. Okay, a couple other updates. Our Prop 39 projects are complete, so they are now depreciating. So that's excellent. We have a lot of excellent new lighting and HVAC fixtures at our sites, at 3 of our sites. The Riverside Main Street construction project is underway, which is excellent, getting going on that again. And then coming up next, we have unaudited actuals. And then obviously COVID is a constant thought, what's that's going to do to expense. So we're always trying to, keep on top of that. Cash flow needs, that's a statewide, everyone's talking about cash flow, everyone's having trainings and, making sure that we're prepared to weather the deferrals that come our way in the spring. It's a big focus at the moment. And then as we move forward, also just making sure we're managing our PPP loan funds and ensuring that we maximize our forgiveness on that and get all of our ducks in a row for reporting. And then if we do need to secure some sort of financing for cash flow in the spring, And then, of course, obviously with COVID, we don't know how long-term this is going to be in terms of, the pandemic itself affecting us day to day, and then long-term economic damage as well. So,
Liz, I don't know how to raise my hand, so I'm just gonna have to butt in. I hope you don't mind.
yes.
Are you following how the PPP rules have changed, even to be more lenient and more able to use?
Yes, definitely. So when we first had applied for the PPP, there was very strict requirements of, spending the money within, I think it was 8 weeks, and, the percentage that had to be spent on payroll was very high. And since then, I think the deadline, the last I heard, it had been extended through December 31st, and then the percentage that you had to spend on payroll had decreased as well.
Correct. So just make sure. Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure you're up on all that as you're making. So we have more flexibility. The other thing is the fact that the state is deferring money is further reason for eligibility and receipt of the PPP funds. I was confident we should have received them before. I'm even more confident now, and we want to make sure we note that.
Yes, and I definitely agree with that. We have already seen, even just from the June to July deferral, we did have a period of time where if we had not had the PPP, would have had a cash flow need. All right, does anyone else have any questions or comments? No. Okay, I believe next on the agenda is Jana's report. Jana, do you want to take control of the screen, or do you want me to just have it up on mine?
No, you can just have it up on yours if you don't mind. Are you able to balance the recording and it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And good job on the financial report. We used to call Adam, Mr. Sunshine, or Mr. whatever, and then we called Bryce Mr. Sunshine. Well, you are Mrs. Sunshine. It's all relatively good news, so thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hi, board. Hello. Hi, everybody. Go ahead, Liz. Go forward. And if you want me to take it over, it's okay. I can do that too. I just have a quick recap of some changes that we've made this year to the program. We'll talk a little bit about our enrollment and what's happened with those caps and how that affected the third bullet, which is staffing. I wanted to bring some really good sunshiny news to you all about some really nice increases and great net effects of all of the efforts that we've been putting in place for the last 2 years to increase the number of students that each one of our credits get, or credits that each one of our students get each semester. Talk a little bit more about the political climate, give you a little bit of update on the Riverside Facility, and then talk about our career technical education grants, which, by the way, woohoo, just came out about a half an hour ago. So program, all resource centers will be closed September 30th. I've been trying to keep you in the loop as we notify parents and staff about our decisions, and we're going through this, but we have made the decision to do that. We will make decisions moving forward in 4-week intervals. That way, if we have, teachers who need to get coverage for children, or parents that need to get coverage, or what have you, they will have time to do that. So, for example, San Diego County a couple of days ago, they got off the watch list. They're counting backwards for their 14 days. The county superintendent said we will open on the 15th day, and Dr. Campbell and I were joking about it earlier, as has Orange County, which we do serve Orange County students too a little bit. None of our other central counties in Sonoma County or Butte County or Riverside County have been removed from the watch list yet, only San Diego County. So we're just going to be watching it little by little. I did send an email out to staff, my cabinet this morning, saying, guys, we may get to a point where we have to have some resource centers open based on their county and others closed, and so be it. That's what we will do. We have been updating all of our COVID protocol for the staff. I sent out a memo to them regarding all of the rules if they were going to be coming to campus now. We've actually extended some of those. We have our no-touch thermometer. Every staff person has to take their temperature, sign in every single day, put what their temperature is. that day that they come to the campus, and they have to check a box to say that they've not been in contact with anybody, nor have they or anybody they know had any symptoms. And we have a list of the symptoms on this form, and they're going to have to do that every time they come to the campus. We have classified staff on campus, and we have had them on campus all summer. And so we've put these protocols in place now for if they're going to come to the school site, even though the kids will not be coming to the school site. It is their main central office. As I was telling Chairman Lewis earlier, Liz came up with a process that we are implementing for staff to be able to check out tables and desks and chairs and monitors and things like that, so that they can work from home a little bit more comfortably. We've also created this fantastic pivot-wide workshop schedule where teachers from all campuses are providing support and hands-on activities to students from all campuses. So for example, Gail, who is one of our math teachers in Pivot San Diego, will have a workshop where she will be serving kids from all 4 of our campuses, not just Pivot San Diego. We're really excited to implement that this year and utilize all of the expertise from many of our staff to serve all students within our network. Go ahead, Liz. Teachers will contact students daily. That is nothing new, especially if the student was not coming to a resource center in the past. However, we are going to implement that they will have to meet with their teachers 2 days a week on video conference. That will continue to happen. And something we were going to implement this year, regardless of COVID, is we were going to be having family meetings every Fridays, where they will be meeting with the parents and the student. So if you have a caseload of 28 kids, you will meet with those families once a month on a Friday, and it will be a comprehensive review of how the student is progressing, in addition to obviously the day-to-day contact, the reporting that we give out every Friday on how the student is doing, and then just our video conferencings. To be honest, those additional 2 days a week video conferencings will only be during COVID. The intent of them is to make sure that students are feeling safe and comfortable, and that they have what they need, that they are getting food, that they're feeling safe in their home, that they have a decent workplace. It'd be more of a safety, mental health, and emotional checks when they're meeting with on those 2 days a week face to face. And the teachers will be asked to make sure that they see what's going on and try to ascertain how the student is doing emotionally and mental health wise. Those meetings on Fridays that we had already discussed doing for this year, regardless of COVID, were more progress meetings. So that'll be a big change. There will be no face-to-face services at all until we have officially opened resource centers, and that is including special education. There was a comment by the governor in one of his recent press conferences that we are allowed to meet in very small groups with students of high need. That we are still awaiting feedback and guidance from the Department of Education on what that would look like. And obviously they're working with the California Department of Public Health on what that would look like. So at this point, we will not be doing anything face-to-face, including any assessments that are needed to be conducted for special education students. And as we know, there are specific timelines for those. We have been working with our SELPA as well as with CDE, and by we really Tracy Williams, our Director of Special Education, on how we can protect ourselves, given that we will be doing things a little differently in that realm until our resource centers are opened up. Go ahead, Liz. As you know, we have our MTSS coordinator, Kristen Poitras, and her role this year is really more MTSS and remediation. And she has developed, with Lindsay's help, these incredible academic support plans based on the students' assessment results. And by assessment results, I mean our internal iReady and ExactPath, and we have another one, iExcel. It's sort of a remediation plan, to speak, and there'll be plenty of data in it, and the parent will get that plan, and she will work with their teachers on implementing the plan when a student is placed on our multiple tiered system of support. It's going to be really cool. We'll give you some more details and numbers after we've implemented to let you know how many have been placed on it and why, and give you an idea of how that's going at our next board meeting. The plan itself is new. The data is not new. The assessments aren't new. Remediation is not new. How we use remediation is not new. But this really cool plan, it will be new. And Kristen overseeing these plans with the families is a new task for her as well. And we're really excited about it. As we mentioned in the spring, Apex, our high school curriculum, has finally finished their middle school curriculum. We did have some people, some students and teachers testing it last year, and they liked it way better than what we were using. So we have officially moved our middle school students over to the Apex curriculum for their core curriculum. We are still using Edmentum for electives and CTE, which is what they were using, the middle school kids were using for their core curriculum. And our elementary school students are still on accelerated, but the Apex program is just way more solid. We've been waiting years for them to roll that out. Any questions on that? On the program piece? All right. As you saw from the enrollment reports that I've been sending out to you, we have so many elementary school students, about 3 times as many. We had moved to this sort of, a pivot-wide budgeting model where we knew we were going to be able to maybe use some of the elementary school staff in Southern Cal to cover Northern Cal. That was our plan for this year. That went out the window because we had so many more students. They're already full down in Southern Cal at the elementary. And while legally our elementary school teachers or our middle and high school credentialed teachers legally in independent study are allowed to be the teacher of record for elementary school students, as you can imagine, most of them are probably not comfortable doing that, and it's not the best for the parents to have a high school credentialed teacher working with them on their developmentally sensitive youngins, littles. So it's a very different position because you're working more with mom and dad and teaching them how to work with their child, especially at the TK through 3 level. You're working with them as opposed to the high school teacher that's primarily working with the high school student and the family. It's a little shift, so it's a different role. Keep going and I'll tell you how we solved the problem. We have 11 new employees. Actually, that's gone down since then, 10 now. But what I did to solve the elementary school numbers is I rehired the Casper Creek elementary school teacher that, as we've parted ways with Casper Creek's facility, those teachers did not find positions out in Mendocino. And there were 2 exceptional elementary school teachers there. I wish I could snag them both, but I did offer a position to her to cover the elementary at Pivot North Bay. So we are doing a lot of training with so many new staff. And I did give you a rundown in my executive director report as to what all of those positions are. Other than the one before you right now with the Casper Creek elementary school teacher, there are none that were different than what we told you in our staffing plan in June that we were going to be hiring for that you all approved.
Jane, I have a question, and I appreciate you taking breather breaks between each of these topics so we can ask a question. So I had asked you earlier, and I think the other board members should hear that in an era of enrollment caps, if we're tripling elementary, how are we doing that? And is that a zero-sum game, which I thought it might be? And then so how are you managing, because it kind of is, I think you told me. But can you explain that to the board? I think it's important.
Sure. Yeah, as far as our enrollment, a student is a student is a student, right? And so we are legally allowed to cap by grade level, to say that we have, filled those grade levels. But up until about a week ago, students were students, and we were taking all students, all grade levels. And what we have done since then is we have capped elementary. If we have a spot become available, we will not be pulling from the elementary wait list as right now. It'll be pulled from the 6th through 12th grade spaces opening because of staffing. I can't go out and get yet another elementary school teacher to cover it. And so staffing is a big issue. It's also, I was sort of talking about this with board member Halverson yesterday too. While I do believe that the elementary school boom to us is due to COVID. And many of these parents will go back to traditional schools once they're able to do a regular traditional 5-day-a-week, all-day program at their traditional schools. Some will not go back, we believe, and there's been lots of conversations on many different statewide levels, because there is talk that when a vaccine is released for COVID, that it will be added to the list of required vaccines for students. And there are many families that, even if they are not what you would call a traditional anti-vaxxer, do not want to necessarily be the first ones to line their children up to get the vaccines for COVID. So we do believe that there will be families that will stay in independent study, homeschool, non-classroom based programs. If they do not get the vaccine, though, just like all the other vaccines, they are never allowed to step foot on campus. All of their meetings with their teachers have to be, through video conferencing. They're not allowed to be around other children and be around other staff. So anyway, so I do think that we will retain not all of them, but some of them. But anyway, in the meantime, still staffing is an issue, and we're capping elementary. If we pull anybody off the wait list, it will be in grades 6 through 12. Does that answer your question, Mr. Lewis, and share enough with the board?
Yes, thank you.
Any questions, board members, on the cap or staffing or enrollment and how they're? Okay. And I'd like to say, again, I've been having conversations with some of you on the side about this. If you recall, when we started budgeting in March of last year, we said we're going to be doing this pivot-wide model of staffing and budgeting, of position control, essentially, and based on enrollment. So since we are capped right now at last year's February 29th level, it is exactly like last year. For example, Riverside right now is overstaffed and under-enrolled because that's where they were in February of last year. And the plan then is exactly what we're doing now. We will be using part of an FTE of a Riverside staff person and apply them to Pivot North Bay to cover the overage of students at Pivot North Bay. So it hasn't changed. We're just starting it from day one. The real bummer is we have 60 kids on a wait list at Pivot Riverside. We wouldn't be overstaffed and under-enrolled. I would be hiring like crazy in Riverside if we weren't capped right now. But we're perfectly safe and fine and perfectly staffed for the levels that we have right now of students based on last year's enrollment. Questions? Okay. Little ray of sunshine in the COVID clouds here. Most everybody was expecting, was fearful that given our quick stay at home and all of the things that our students were going through, that our number of credits that students would be able to attain in the spring would go down, even though, obviously our program is totally geared towards serving these kids. It was still a big change to most of our families' lives, and many of the families lost, the parents lost jobs, and, all their siblings are at home all of a sudden. So there were lots of things going on other than just the fact that they should be able to continue their online program with us that would interfere with it. The good news is, well, Pivot North Valley did take a dip, and we've been working with them on that. And Craig, in his new role as regional director, got on top of that from day one. I'm really, really pleased to see Pivot North Bay's numbers come up so high, from the number of credits that students were earning in the semester in the spring from the fall to the spring. And same thing with Riverside. It was a significant increase. San Diego is down at with the students that are coming to us so credit deficient and so behind in their basic skills, to 27.5 or 27.2 out of the 30 credits that we are trying to get them to attain every semester is significant. And they've been, they came up great last year and the spring of the year before. But everyone else coming up, the other two sites, we're very, very pleased with that. And again, that's our primary focus. And Mr. Hobart's focus as regional director is to work with the sites to continue to see that happen. So I wanted to bring you some good news. As I mentioned earlier, just to kind of take it in 3 steps, back in June, our budgets were slashed roughly 10%, 7.9 plus COLA. When you passed the budget, we knew that something would change by August, which is why we're meeting here today. They restored that funding more or less. Liz has already gone through that. However, they did say, we're not going to pay you any more than what you got in what you had in February of last year. As you can imagine, our large districts, large counties, are probably seeing an exodus, from students living in their areas, going to charter schools, going to the rural counties. So those large districts, let's just say LA Unified, we'll pick on them, they're losing a lot of students. And they're like, Mr. Governor, we're going to go bankrupt if you don't fund us at least what we had last year. We're not going to be serving that many kids. We know we aren't, but if we can't, we're going to go under. So he basically said, we're not going to pay any schools for growth. You're stuck at where you were. All of these rural schools and charter schools and all of these other schools that are taking on all of the new students, they're like, wait a second, how am I supposed to serve these kids? And you're not going to fund me for them. Tahoe Truckee Unified, where I live, 350 extra students, and it's not a large school district. It's not even as big as San Marcos. So that's $3.5 million that they would be short, having to serve all of these people who decided to move into their second homes up in Tahoe because, it's so pretty and it's safer, right? Not to mention our hospitals, but I won't go there. So he came up with a compromise about 2 weeks ago, and he said, okay, we will fund growth only based on what you thought you might be growing when you approved your budget in June. And as Liz mentioned earlier, that was 29 students pivot wide for us. We were going very conservative in our growth model, as we have for the last couple of years. I don't know whether Tahoe Truckee had planned on 350 extra students. I doubt it. But he basically said, I will pay you on that number of growth, nothing else. So that was a compromise. However, he said, but none of you non-classroom based charter schools. Only you classroom based charter schools and only you traditional schools. Non-classroom based, you don't get squat. Because he knows, the legislators know, that many of these families are saying, my district didn't do great last year with this. I'm going to go to a school that might have a little more experience doing this, since we're all going to be, in this mode this year. So he realized that, the legislators realized that. And so we are stuck with what we have. Any questions on that? Oops. Forgot I had a slide all about that. We actually have more than 60 kids on the wait list right now, pivot wide. So we are at about, North Bay will have a wait list by the end of the week of roughly 30, and we've got 40 or so in San Diego, believe it or not, and in San Marcos, and we have another 40 or 50 in Riverside. Any questions on that? All right, Riverside Facility. I've been trying to keep you up to date in my monthly reports. We are ordering the pump to connect to the city sewage that we didn't know we were going to have to do. The really good news is, as of yesterday morning, we got the okay from the mold company to be able to continue construction. And all of that, just so you know, our landlord paid for, as it was their responsibility in our lease. And we got the A-OK, and the contractor talked to me yesterday and said, we are back on the job. So that was good. Also wanted to let you know, just from a facility standpoint, not just at Riverside, but we did have to throw it into our plans for Riverside. It was an add-on with our architect. We are creating these plexiglass enclosures for our site coordinators to deal with COVID and when the public does come back in and when people come in, because they have the most face-to-face contact with random public, as you know, almost as much as our teachers. So we're enclosing all of their workspaces. Our architect has been, our architectural firm has been incredible to work with. Board member Siegel also helped us find a consultant to take some things off my plate and support me in making decisions. And we haven't needed him as much as I thought we would, because the architectural firm has been great, as has the contractors, but he's there if I need him, or if something doesn't feel right to me, I go to him. He hasn't billed us yet because it's been so minuscule. So I can't tell you how much it's cost us yet.
So on that, I do have a question and then a comment. Jana, I'm really glad to see we're moving forward on this. Do we have, one of my concerns about the architecture firm managing the project was who's watching the change orders and kind of watching them and the contractor from working together to make the project more expensive, or, oh, it'd be nice if we added this. Oh yeah, let's do it. So I'd ask, how are we doing on change orders or additional costs? We may be fine. So
Yeah, we're fine.
Great. And then I will offer.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't. We have had, for example, like the pump, that was an additional cost. But the process is I have the final say. And if I don't understand it, because, don't look now, but I'm not a contractor, that's where I go to my consultant or to our architectural firm and they explain it to me, and we're getting bids for everything, like the pump. But the pump was the only significant one, and then obviously the plexiglass enclosure for the site coordinator. But basically, they can't make change orders without getting it in writing from me, and I made sure that was in the contract.
Right. Okay, and so to date, we haven't, aside from those things, had any. That's good. Okay, because as the project goes further and further, the odds of major change orders will get less and less as you start putting the walls in and doors, and because then you're just getting down to finishes. And then I will offer, and I'm not sure if any other board members are interested, I know we have our facilities committee, and I would be happy to, at some point, Jana, maybe at 3/4 of the project or something, I think it would be good to have a few board members take a look at the facility with you, or on that facilities committee, just to kind of see how it looks, how it's going to flow, how it's going to work, to make sure we're not missing anything. So I would offer myself to do that at some point. If that's in late September, early October, we'll see where we are.
Yeah, that would be great, Jim. I would love for you to see it. And I do have Jason, our consultant, also swinging by occasionally. But yes, I would love for you to see it before it's done, when we can make changes. Any questions about the Riverside facility? All right. I'll give you a second to unmute.
And while you're doing that, I see we still do have board member Halverson and Holmes and Sutherland. Board member Martell, have you joined the call yet? No. Okay, just wanted to check. Because I think your next teacher training, you had a little ad in your report. I know you're wrapping up. You have it for 9 o'clock. I want to just check. I think she said she could make it at 9:30. I may have misunderstood that, but if everyone else can make it, doing it a half hour later is not a problem for me. If it helps us add a board member, I know we're going to have, unless we don't want to notice this as a board meeting, we may not want to do that.
You're not going to be discussing board business. You'll be discussing school and history and who you are, but you won't be discussing board business. So that's up to you, but we can change it.
Well, let's just offline check to make sure that that was the best time for all board members. If we could pick up one by waiting a half hour, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, they love hearing from you all. So that would be great. So teachers return on the morning of the 24th. If Lindsay doesn't have gray hair by now, she will by then. We start our training, and obviously we don't want to be on Zoom all day with our staff. The poor things, we would not do that to them. Lindsay has been making videos nonstop for a lot of our training material, and then some of it, obviously, we will be on Zoom, and we'll have some fun stuff and try to make it as palatable as possible. As you know, our foundation is the relationships it's built on. When we all come together in Santa Rosa, it really starts the year off wonderfully, especially for new staff to meet everybody, and they usually get to meet you all, face to face. So it's going to be different. I feel badly that the educational coordinator role is not going to be an easy one to learn without someone there with you. But we have some great new teachers hired this year, and we have some wonderful people training them. So it's a little scary though. So that's it. That's it for your executive director report. Are there questions on anything?
Thank you. Any questions from board members?
None here.
Okay, well, Jana, thank you. A lot of good information, good updates, and appreciate all the work you're doing to keep us on top of all these strange times. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to section 4 of our agenda. This is our discussion and action items. 4.1 is the suggested board meeting calendar. Jana?
So thank you, Liz. Liz created this incredibly, let's make sense of this all, spreadsheet that she sent out to you. And I asked her to put it back in the packet so we can decide when we're going to have our board meetings. It will be a different year as far as board meetings. Everything is going to shift a little bit if you go the way that we're suggesting we do. We're having this meeting because we needed to do a budget update. Not that you're reapproving a budget. We're not required to, but you needed to know where we stood based on all the craziness. And then we have to, as Liz mentioned earlier, we have to have 2 meetings in September to first have a public hearing on the learning continuity and attendance plan, which sort of replaces, although CDE doesn't like it when we say that, the LCAP. And then we actually have to adopt it as well and ratify our unaudited actuals in September, sort of back to back, as we had to with the LCAP, where you have the public hearing and then you adopt a budget and the actual plan later. So we're suggesting sometime the week of the September 21st to 26th. It will probably not be a long meeting. The LCP will be the primary thing on that board meeting, and any updates we have as far as, enrollment and staffing and whatnot. We're suggesting that you may want to have a special board meeting if you're concerned about enrollment, funding, staffing, if anything happens with the cap. But otherwise, we have to have a public hearing for a budget overview based on the LCP and our first interim budgets sometime in December. So I don't see that. Honestly, I don't think we're going to need a meeting in October, November, but you may just want to put a placeholder for a special board meeting as opposed to a regularly scheduled one. But we will need one in December to cover the things that Liz has highlighted, which are different. She's highlighted the things that are different than what we our normal sequence of board meetings. And for Dr. Campbell's sake, our board does not meet monthly. We don't have that much stuff to cover like you all do. We do meet about 5 times a year usually, and we'll be meeting obviously more times this year. And last year we also met more times because of all the emergencies. So this is what we are suggesting we do as far as a board meeting schedule. And so long as we're not having it during any football games that may or may not come back at USC or anywhere else, then you guys should just choose some days.
Would you like us to do that right now? I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we were supposed to approve a regularly scheduled board meeting calendar. And again, lots of things are happening. But
we're missing 3 board members, I think.
I know.
So it makes it hard to schedule.
I know.
But I think we should just shoot for it.
Yeah, you could just come up with something.
I think we should shoot for it. Okay, so board members, how about looking at the week of the 21st to 26th? So we will need to have a hearing and then adopt the LCP, and those are at different meetings. So maybe we could do one day and maybe one 48 hours later, just so there's time for the public to review it. So maybe we could do something like on a Tuesday and a Friday. Would that work if we did something on the 22nd and the 25th in the morning, maybe like 9 a.m.?
Halverson can't do it on Tuesdays.
Okay.
But by the way, I've been going in and out about 4 different times, so rejoining you. So that's also, I had to wander around the house to get a decent connection. So anyway.
Well, we're glad you're here.
I'm surprised you're even on.
Oh. See, Jane, at least you know your board members are actually...
You can tell him what he can do.
This is being recorded, remember.
Thank you, Doctor.
I missed the
I didn't say anything was inappropriate.
I miss the esprit de corps of being with you board members. I know that we are a neat group. I miss you guys. So can I recommend the 23rd at 9 and the 25th at 9 a.m.?
That Wednesday and Friday?
Yeah. Would that be okay for board members?
Yeah.
Okay with me.
I've got, could we do
Okay,
10
so-
o'clock on the 25th?
Sure.
I'm good for the 23rd, but the 25th, I've got a 9.
Okay, so Liz, why don't you send us a meeting invite for, and I heard OJ say he's okay, 9 o'clock on the 23rd and 10 o'clock on the 25th. So that takes care of those.
Okay, will do.
We'll keep ourselves flexible for November. I'm not going to want to go without a meeting, though, through the end of the calendar year, Jana. I think
No.
we're going to need to have something. We traditionally meet that second weekend of November. Are you suggesting because of this we won't be prepared to do a BOP, an interim budget, until December? Is there information we won't have?
Yeah, we will not have all the information we need in November. Correct, Liz? It's almost impossible.
Yeah, so the first interim budget report is based on financials through October. So we need time to close the books and have all that updated. So
Okay, why don't we shoot for, could I suggest December 11th, Friday, for a board meeting that week? Or the Saturday?
Sounds good.
Board members' pleasure.
Either one for me.
or both, since we need to, because we have to do the public hearing.
Oh, let's do, okay, they have to be different dates. Let's do the 11th and 12th then. And why don't we shoot for, Ralph, is your Friday at 10? Is that you want to keep that later?
Whichever you want, I'm fine.
Why don't we
on the
calendar
11th,
it
I'm
for-
fine.
Okay, so why don't we calendar it for 10 o'clock on Friday, the 11th, and Saturday the 12th, Liz. Send us invites for that.
Okay.
And then the strategic planning session doesn't usually go into February. I don't know why we have that. Could I recommend the week prior? Who knows where we'll be by then? We might have that in person, or might be, you never know. Can we shoot for like the 29th and 30th?
Yeah, I don't see why we can't. We were just trying to have more time in between, so we had stuff to talk about, but it is actually more our strategic planning.
So let's move that, if that's okay with everybody. I have a professional meeting the 5th and 6th for the State City Managers Group. It's always that weekend, so I'd prefer to move that back if we can. Tom, OJ, do you have any issue for now holding?
Is that January?
Yeah.
That's
The
okay.
January 29th and 30th.
That's
That's
works.
fine.
Works for
OJ,
me.
it's okay? Okay, great. Let's try and hold those. That's the more traditional time that we do that anyways. Now, why don't we just start with that, Jana, unless we need to have the whole year planned out? Can we because by April we may be who knows? Do we by law have to set a whole year up, or can we just leave it at that?
You know,
Why don't we leave? You have it here, April 3rd and June 5th. Let's leave those. Those are
Yeah.
our traditional dates.
yeah.
Okay.
We did kind of assume that we might be back to more face-to-face by then.
Yeah.
So we just set them for the typical days.
Okay. And
Okay.
then would you like the start time to be the usual 8:30 a.m. start
Yeah.
time for those
Yeah.
other meetings? Okay.
Yep. Okay, so April 3rd will be 8:30 in the morning. And then, let's see, and then Easter, that's the Saturday before Easter. Is that okay? I don't know.
Sure.
Good here.
It's better than Easter Sunday weekend, right?
Well, that's for sure. So make sure people aren't traveling for Easter to see family.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
and then,
fine.
Okay, and then June 5th, we'll have a meeting too. So there you go. So if that's okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve the board meeting calendar for 2021.
Halverson moves.
Thank you.
Second.
Holmes, second. Thank you. Any discussion on that? Okay, then all those in
Sorry.
favor say aye. Oh, go ahead. Was there discussion?
Yeah, somebody's going to put this all together in a orderly piece.
Yeah, Liz, Liz will send this to us all with invites to them. So
Good.
at least for Liz, we'll send you Zoom invites through November and Google Meet invites. We'll get those all scheduled. So Liz, can you send out a summary to all the board members?
Yep, will do.
Great.
Don't screw it
Thank
up.
you.
Okay, as a move in second, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, opposed? Okay, the board member calendar is approved. Thank you. Next item is 4.2, a resolution 2020-4. This is continuing our action during the pandemic. We need to extend this through the school year. I think you guys have read the report. Jana, do you have any more to add? This just extends this resolution through the school year.
Yeah, it gives me authority to, do the emergency things that we have to do to open, mainly to open and close as our counties get back on the watch list and off the watch list and make those decisions without having to convene a board meeting. That's going to be the biggie.
Okay, any questions of board members on resolution 2020-4?
No.
All right, any members of the public want to comment on 4.2, resolution 2020-4? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2020-4.
Move, Halverson.
Second.
Sutherland, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, passes 4-0. Item 4.3, this was a lot of work, by the way. I'll turn this over to our executive director, was our health and safety policy for COVID-19. Wow.
Looks like a hell of a lot of work.
Well, I did have templateness, so to go off of this from legal counsel, as you all know, the Butte County Charter School leaders, they per capita, that's the largest of charters in any county per capita. In Butte County, we're a pretty tight-knit group. We work very, 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 very closely with the county, more so than anywhere else besides maybe Riverside. But anyway, so we share stuff. Somebody else paid the attorney for this. We had to, there were lots of things. It was more geared towards site-based things than what we look like. So I did have to go through it and update it and, make a pivot. But it's the plan we're going to follow moving forward. We have not had meetings with the families yet about what it's going to look like for their children when they do come back, because I don't want to have those meetings until we actually are going to come back. But we will have, just like we did today, Mr. Hobart actually had parent orientation. He had 76 parents join today for parent orientation. We'll do the same kind of thing when we have to update them as to what it's going to look like for their children. But this is our plan moving forward. Oh, thank you,
Okay.
Craig. There were actually 2 orientations. So Craig had 76, and Travis Bennett and Jenny Clopton were doing another one because we only have 100 limit on our Zoom, and they had 67 parents attend orientation before school even starts. That's pretty exciting. So.
Okay, any other questions of board members regarding the health and safety policy? I think this is very important, so I appreciate the effort. Any questions? Okay, any members of the public wish to speak on item 4.3? Okay, seeing none, then I'd like to ask for approval, a motion to approve the health and safety policy.
Move.
I'll make a motion. This is Ralph Holmes.
Okay, move Halverson, second Holmes. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Okay, I think I heard 3. I'll go if that's 4. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Tom, are you still on the line?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Maybe you guys I'm not hearing everyone vote. Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 4 point. Go ahead, Tom.
Mr. Technology,
Well, what are you doing being homebound? No cruise ships, man. You must really be.
You're interrupting my naps.
All right. Item 4.4, ratification of contract. Caldwell Consulting. This has to do with CTE. Ms. Gaskell.
Yeah, I was actually pretty excited and stunned and that they are moving forward with the CTE grants, and there's several different kinds of, there's several, but the two that I outlined in my staff report here, the CTE incentive grant was just released about an hour ago. I got our consultant, Ms. Caldwell, was frantically texting me, "Where are you?" I just sent you them. I'm like, I know, I'm on a board meeting. Anyway, so she is a wonderful educator, very, very experienced, been a teacher, a principal, and a superintendent, and she did some significant work in her county on CTE. As you know, this has been, we have tried and tried, started and stopped several different ways to do something really, really solid with CTE. We do okay with CTE, but you know, all of us, you all included, at every strategic planning meeting for the last 2 years, we've recommitted to doing something solid, but we need the funds. And so she's going to help us secure the grants. She will be paid from the grants, and she will help us implement a much more extensive CTE program supported by the grants. So I was very excited to be introduced to her by Tim Taylor, who is now the executive director of the Small Schools District Association, but he is the former county superintendent up in Butte County. I've really enjoyed working with her.
Okay, this looks like a good use of dollars to try and pull down some of these grants, which are so important. So I certainly appreciate the work in this, and I appreciate that this is a limited contract on an hourly basis. Are there any questions from board members about this? It certainly is an area we wanted more effort spent. So I appreciate it.
I have a question.
Sure, OJ.
Question is the 90-day out clause both ways seems to be pretty long for this type contract.
Yeah, I'll be
normal?
honest. You know, it's between 60 and 90. When I was consultant, mine was 60. I could ask her to change it. We can you know, with that amendment, and I'm sure she'd be receptive to that. It's a good point. That's a good point, OJ. Mine was 60, so I wasn't overwhelmed with 90, but
Might as well ask the
It
question. I think
just
it's a
seems
good
to me
question.
that. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think that's a great question, and might as well ask.
so if you're gonna ratify the contract, you could ratify it with direction for the executive director to request that to be amended. And I'll, you know, if she doesn't amend it, I'll bring it back to you in the next board meeting. But if she does, we'll just consider it done. Does that work?
Yeah, I don't think she'll have issue. So I guess the motion would be to, now do you want to sign this, Jana, or am I? The motion should say that we're delegating you to sign this. If you're signing
Yeah.
it, correct?
Normally a contract of this size, I can sign it alone.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve a contract with Caldwell Consulting with the modification of a 60-day out and authorize the executive director to sign it. Actually, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Here's a second. Any further discussion? Did I ask for public comment on this? I can't remember. If I didn't, I'll open this to public comment at this point in time. Okay, hearing none, then we have a motion and a second. I will say all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Passes. Thank you, Jana, for putting continued work into that. Appreciate it. That's good. Okay, our next item is the consolidated applications of certification of assurances. Liz, do you want to give a quick review of these? These are always a good bit of work for each of our sites. I'll turn it to you.
Sure. Yes. So the consolidated application is the means by which we apply for federal funding and complete some reporting requirements for federal funding. And historically, we have only received federal funding for special education. But after much discussion with the board last year, we had decided to apply for title funding for the coming fiscal year, for fiscal year 21. So this will be the first time that we're applying for Title I funding. So there's a little bit more to do with the consolidated application regarding that. But every year we normally do these in June, but due to the timelines being changed because of COVID, they didn't actually open up the submission window for the coming fiscal year until July, which is why we're seeing these now instead of in June. So items 4.5 through 4.8 are the certification of assurances, including various policies that we need to maintain in order to qualify for federal funding. And then items 4.9 through 4.12 are the actual applications for federal title program funding.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from board members?
None here.
Okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on items 4.6 through 4.8? I'm sorry, 4.5 through 4.8. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve items 4.5 through 4.8 with the record reflecting individual votes.
Move.
Second.
Albertson, second by Holmes. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Thank you. The application certification of assurances is approved. Moving on, 4.9 through 4.12 is the application for federal funding. Liz, do you want to add any more to that? Or we're good?
No, I think we're good. Just other than it is about $40,000 worth of revenue that we will see from this funding that we have not seen in previous years.
Yeah, this is new funding. I wanted to point that out to the other board members in case they hadn't caught that. Yes, so we'll see. And I take it this amount of funding is worth the effort for the funding?
We'll see. We'll see. That's why we haven't gone for it before. I wanted Dr. Campbell to know that. With some of our schools being so small, it's just not worth the hassle of the hoops you have to jump through for federal funding. But at this point, every dime counts. So Liz and I have talked about it on and off for the last 3 years, and it always seems like it's not going to be worth it. It's a pain in the butt. And given that I think it lands on Dr. Campbell's plate at San Marcos, or at least it used to on Gina's plate, I'm guessing that she would agree that, yeah, it might not be worth it, but we'll find out. We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Dr. Campbell, do you have any comments on that for our board, since you're very experienced in this area?
Dr. Campbell, can you tell us if you think this is worthwhile or not, if you don't mind?
I really think it will definitely depend. I can tell you from our end, even in our district, there are some that we just say it's not worth it, because not only because of the amount of money, but also the things that are attached to it and the limitations that you will have. So I would look at it, see if it's worth it for a while. Just be of saying, we do the same thing in our large district. We do the exact same thing.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I appreciate it. So that sounds like you're saying the try it and see what you think approach, and we'll go with that as you do in your district. Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on items 4.9 through 4.12 federal application for program funding? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for 4.9 through 4.12 with the minutes reflecting individual votes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, those are approved. We will move on to our consent agenda. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on either of the two items on our consent agenda? Hearing none, I will just say I'm always interested to read policies like this, the things that we have to think through and how delicate some of these services can be and what we need to do. I found these very interesting. Appreciate that we're up on top of all of this. Any other comments from board members on the consent calendar? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Moved.
Okay,
Second.
moved by Halverson, second by Holmes. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
those opposed? Was that Pat?
No, I don't think so.
I thought I heard Pat. Okay. Well, great. Then the consent calendar is approved. We do have 3 items for closed session. We did add a closed session to the calendar earlier this week. So we have conference with labor negotiators, we have the public employee performance evaluation of our executive director, and we do have anticipated litigation. So we will close now to closed session.
Well, hold on. Time out. Sorry. The litigation issue, because we're not able to post it soon enough, is a whole separate meeting. So we are going to, before we go into closed session, I wanted to let everyone know, we will go into these closed session items that have been on the agenda. We will report out of closed session. There will be an action taken on, or not, in public, on the compensation plan. And then we will close this meeting. We are going to open a new meeting that I sent you, and the title of the email was second meeting for Friday. There's only one item on it. We're going to end up, unless there's public comment, well, it's run the same way as any board meeting. You will approve the agenda. We will have public comment, and we will go into closed session with legal counsel. So it's 2 separate meetings. I just wanted to clarify. And Jim, while we're at it, I just want to mention on the consent agenda items, just backtracking here. As I mentioned to you earlier, we have so many required policies that have to be sent to parents and notifications, and the majority of them fall under the category of health and safety and student issues. And Corrine Olson, our Director of Student Services, she is in charge of all of those. So she has been in charge of making sure that they're all kept up to date with both federal and state law, updating them all summer long. And there's a ton more coming your way at the next board meeting, but she's been working tirelessly on it. And I just wanted to acknowledge the work that she puts towards all of that. They tweak them all the time. And so she's having to stay on top of it and attend all kinds of trainings on them. Lindsay oftentimes attends the things as well, but I really want to acknowledge all the work that goes into writing those.
Thank you for doing that, and thank you for putting those policies together. That's great. Okay, then we will adjourn to closed session. Let's come back on in 5 minutes. Board members, stretch, use the restroom, grab a soft drink, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you all, and we'll
and board members, remember, there's a Zoom to go to for the closed session. We tried to separate it so that we could keep this open. There is a separate link so that we couldn't be bombed. And I sent it to you in an email with both of them there, open and closed, open and closed. If you have any questions, just text or call me, okay?
All right. Okay.
Expect a phone call, Jana.
No.
All right.
No.
And you can also
call in the same.
It'll be from
yes.
Ralph
The
anyway.
call in is the same. You don't need to be seen. You can call in, and that'll work out just fine. And then we will be reconvening in public session again. So board members, let's take a break, jump in. You can call Jana right now if you need information on the closed session. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Bye.
Hey, thanks, Jim.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell.
More software, learning tools that you have to keep track of. Never mind the fact that you're having to reach out and engage your students more. And so we're very grateful for the work that you're doing. And so as a result of that, we want to make sure that we're continuing to invest in you. And so one, we are pleased for our staff and members in the Santa Rosa area. We know that still is a very expensive area, and we want to continue so I would recommend that we continue the temporary relocation assistance of $1,200 a year. 2, that we offer a 1% raise across the board to all Pivot employees, and an additional 1% to our certificated teaching staff. As we know, there continues to be just a lot of competition for our teaching staff. And so that would be a 1% raise across the board plus 1% for certificated staff. And then we would also submit that we recognize there is a reference in one of our compensation policies for an incentive for master's degrees. We would like to change that terminology to graduate degree, recognizing that there are other degrees, including doctorates, that should be included in that incentive. So I would submit that to the board as a compensation plan. Ms. Gaskell, would that be adequate as a compensation plan for the staff in your opinion?
I think it's a very, very generous compensation plan, recognizing the hard work everybody's put in anytime, no less in these times. And I really, really, on behalf of the entire staff, thank you, board members, for finding ways to do that and knowing how important it is. I really appreciate your recognition of that.
Are there any questions or comments by board members before I open it to public comment?
I have none.
Okay, hearing none, I will open this up to public comment. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak on the staffing and compensation plan as outlined?
Jim, can I just ask for clarification? We had also talked about not only changing it to a graduate degree, but for all staff, not just credentialed staff. Was that your
Correct.
understanding?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure, clarify that.
Thank you for getting that on the record. Any members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion for a compensation plan as presented.
Move, Halverson.
Second.
Second by Sutherland. Any further discussion of board members? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, board members, for supporting continued investment in our biggest asset, our people. That passes 5-0. Appreciate that. Our next scheduled board meetings have been set. They have been set for the last week of September. Will be our next board meetings, I believe. Liz, we said the 23rd and the 25th, I believe, for our board meetings in September.
Yes.
And so those will be on the 23rd at 9 a.m. on the 25th at 10 a.m. By teleconference. Are there any other comments from any of the board members before we adjourn?
None here.
Okay, hearing none, we will adjourn this meeting and then